Academy, Wikipedia article audio. An academy is an institution of secondary education, higher learning, research, or honorary membership. The name traces back to Plato's school of philosophy, founded approximately 385 BC at Academia, a sanctuary of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and skill, north of Athens, Greece. The original academy. The Neoplatonic Academy of late antiquity. Before Academia was a school, and even before Cimon enclosed its precincts with a wall, it contained a sacred grove of olive trees dedicated to Athena, the goddess of wisdom, outside the city walls of ancient Athens. The archaic name for the site was Hecademia, which by classical times evolved into Academia and was explained, at least as early as the beginning of the 6th century BC, by linking it to an Athenian hero, a legendary Academos. The site of Academia was sacred to Athena and other immortals. Plato's immediate successors as scholarch of Academia were Speusippus, Xenocrates, Polemon, Crates, and Arcesilaus. Later scholarches include Lacydes of Cyrene, Carneades, Cletomachus, and Philo of Larissa. Other notable members of Academia include Aristotle, Heraclides Ponticus, Eudoxus of Cnidus, Philip of Opus, Crantor, and Antiochus of Ascalon. After a lapse during the early Roman occupation, Academia was refounded as a new institution of some outstanding Platonists of late antiquity who called themselves successors and presented themselves as an uninterrupted tradition reaching back to Plato. However, there cannot have actually been any geographical, institutional, economic, or personal continuity with the original academy in the new organizational entity. The last Greek philosophers of the revived Academia in the 6th century were drawn from various parts of the Hellenistic cultural world and suggest the broad syncretism of the common culture. 5 of the 7 Academia philosophers mentioned by Agathias were Syriac in their cultural origin: Hermias and Diogenes, Isidorus of Gaza, Damascius of Syria, Iamblichus of Coele Syria, and perhaps even Simplicius of Cilicia. The Emperor Justinian closed the school in AD 529, a date that is often cited as the end of antiquity. According to the sole witness, the historian Agathias, its remaining members looked for protection under the rule of Sassanid king Khosrau I in his capital at Ctesiphon, carrying with them precious scrolls of literature and philosophy, and to a lesser degree of science. After a peace treaty between the Persian and the Byzantine Empire in 532 guaranteed their personal security, some members found sanctuary in the pagan stronghold of Haran, near Edessa. One of the last leading figures of this group was Simplicius, a pupil of Damascius, the last head of the Athenian school. Ancient and medieval institutions. It has been speculated that Academia did not altogether disappear. After his exile, Simplicius may have traveled to Haran, near Edessa. From there, the students of an academy in exile could have survived into the 9th century, long enough to facilitate the Arabic revival of the Neoplatonist commentary tradition in Baghdad. With the Neoplatonist revival that accompanied the revival of humanist studies, Academia took on newly vivid connotations. Renaissance academies in Italy. During the Florentine Renaissance, Cosimo de' Medici took a personal interest in the new Platonic academy that he determined to re-establish in 1439, centered on the marvelous promise shown by the young Marsilio Ficino. Cosimo had been inspired by the arrival at the otherwise ineffective Council of Florence of Gemistos Plethon, who seemed a dazzling figure to the Florentine intellectuals. In 1462 Cosimo gave Ficino a villa at Carigi for the Academy's use, situated where Cosimo could see it from his own villa, and drop by for visits. The Academy remained a wholly informal group, but one which had a great influence on Renaissance Neoplatonism. In Rome, after unity was restored following the Western Schism, humanist circles, cultivating philosophy and searching out and sharing ancient texts tended to gather where there was access to a library. The Vatican Library was not coordinated until 1475 and was never catalogued or widely accessible. Not all popes looked with satisfaction at gatherings of unsupervised intellectuals. At the head of this movement for renewal in Rome was Cardinal Bessarion, whose house from the mid-century was the center of a flourishing academy of Neoplatonic philosophy and a varied intellectual culture. His valuable Greek as well as Latin library was at the disposal of the academicians. Bessarion, in the latter years of his life, retired from Rome to Ravenna, but he left behind him ardent adherents of the classic philosophy. The next generation of humanists were bolder admirers of pagan culture, especially in the highly personal academy of Pomponius Leto, the natural son of a nobleman of the Sanseverino family, born in Calabria but known by his academic name, who devoted his energies to the enthusiastic study of classical antiquity, and attracted a great number of disciples and admirers. He was a worshipper not merely of the literary and artistic form, but also of the ideas and spirit of classic paganism, which made him appear a condemner of Christianity and an enemy of the Church. In his academy every member assumed a classical name. Its principal members were humanists, like Bessarion's protégé Giovanni Antonio Campani, Bartolomeo Platina, the papal librarian, and Filippo Bonacorsi, and young visitors who received Polish in the academic circle, like Publio Fausto Andreolini of Bologna who took the new learning to the University of Paris, to the discomfiture of his friend Erasmus. In their self-confidence, these first intellectual Neopagans compromised themselves politically, at a time when Rome was full of conspiracies fomented by the Roman barons and the neighboring princes. Paul II caused Pomponio and the leaders of the academy to be arrested on charges of irreligion, immorality, and conspiracy against the Pope. The prisoners begged so earnestly for mercy, and with such protestations of repentance, that they were pardoned. The Letonian Academy, however, collapsed. 15th century Academy. In Naples, the Quattrocento Academy founded by Alfonso of Aragon and guided by Antonio Beccadelli was the Porticus Antoniana, later known as the Accademia Pontaniana, after Giovanni Pontano. 16th century literary aesthetic academies. The 16th century saw at Rome a great increase of literary and aesthetic academies, more or less inspired by the Renaissance, all of which assumed, as was the fashion, odd and fantastic names. We learn from various sources the names of many such institutes. As a rule, they soon perished and left no trace. In the 1520s came the Accademia degli Intronati, for the encouragement of theatrical representations. There were also the Academy of the Vinaioli, or vine growers, and the Accademia della Virtù, founded by Claudio Tolomei under the patronage of Cardinal Ippolito de' Medici. These were followed by a new academy in the Orti or Farnese Gardens. There were also the academies of the Intrepidi, the Animosi, and the Illuminati, this last, founded by the Marchesa Isabella Aldobrandini Pallavicino. Towards the middle of the 16th century there were also the Academy of the Nati Vaticane, or Vatican Knights, founded by St. Charles Borromeo, and Accademia di Diritto Civile e Canonico, and another of the university scholars and students of philosophy. As a rule these academies, all very much alike, were merely circles of friends or clients gathered around a learned man or wealthy patron, and were dedicated to literary pastimes rather than methodical study. They fitted in, nevertheless, with the general situation and were in their own way one element of the historical development. Despite their empirical and fugitive character, they helped to keep up the general esteem for literary and other studies. Cardinals, prelates, and the clergy in general were most favorable to this movement, and assisted it by patronage and collaboration. 17th and 18th century academies in Europe. In Florence, the Medici again took the lead in establishing the Accademia e Compagnia dell'Arte del Disegno in 1563, the first of the more formally organized art academies that gradually displaced the medieval artists' guilds, usually known as the Guild of St. Luke, as the bodies responsible for training and often regulating artists, a change with great implications for the development of art, leading to the styles known as academic art. The private Accademia degli Incaminati set up later in the century in Bologna by the Carracci brothers was also extremely influential, and with the Accademia di San Luca of Rome helped to confirm the use of the term for these institutions. Gradually academies began to specialize on particular topics and began to be founded and funded by the kings and other sovereigns. And, mainly, since 17th century academies spread throughout Europe. Literary philosophical academies. In the 17th century the tradition of literary philosophical academies, as circles of friends gathering around learned patrons, was continued in Italy. The Umoristi, the Fantastici, and the Ordinati, founded by Cardinal Detai and Giulio Strozzi. About 1700 were founded the academies of the Inficandi, the Occulti, the Dibali, the Aborigini, the Immobili, the Accademia Esquilina, and others. During the 18th century many Italian cities established similar philosophical and scientific academies. In the first half of the 19th century some of these became the national academies of pre-Unitarian states. The Academy of Assisi became the Panamitan Academy of Buon Gusto, the Academy of Tamidi became the Royal Academy of Mantua, the Accademia dei Ricoverati became the Galileiana Academy of Arts and Science, the Academy of Dissonanti became the Royal Academy of Modena and the Academy of Oscuri became the Royal Academy of Lucca. The Académie de Peinture et de Sculpture in Paris, established by the monarchy in 1648 was the most significant of the artistic academies, running the famous Salon exhibitions from 1725. Artistic academies were established all over Europe by the end of the 18th century, and many, like the Académie der Kunst in Berlin, the Real Academia de Bellas Artes de San Fernando in Madrid, the Imperial Academy of Arts in St. Petersburg, the Royal Academy in London and the Accademia di Belle Arti di Brera in Milan still run art schools and hold large exhibitions, although their influence on taste greatly declined from the late 19th century. A fundamental feature of academic discipline in the artistic academies was regular practice in making accurate drawings from antiquities, or from casts of antiquities, on the one hand, and on the other, in deriving inspiration from the other fount, the human form. Students assembled in sessions drawing the draped and undraped human form, and such drawings, which survive in the tens of thousands from the 17th through the 19th century, are termed academies in French. Similar institutions were often established for other arts. Rome had the Accademia di Santa Cecilia for music from 1585, Paris had the Académie Royale de Musique from 1669 and the Académie Royale d'Architecture from 1671. The Accademia degli Infiammati of Padova and the Accademia degli Umidi, soon renamed the Accademia Fiorentina, of Florence were both founded in 1540, and were both initially concerned with the proper basis for literary use of the vulgar, or vernacular language of Italy, which would later become the Italian language. In 1582 5 Florentine literati gathered and founded the Accademia della Crusca to demonstrate and conserve the beauty of the Florentine vernacular tongue, modelled upon the authors of the Trecento. The main instrument to do so was the Vocabolario degli Accademici della Crusca. The Crusca long remained a private institution, criticizing and opposing the official Accademia Fiorentina. Academies of the Arts. The first institution inspired by the Crusca was the Fruit-Bearing Society for German Language, which existed from 1617 to 1680. Linguistic Academies. The Crusca inspired Richelieu to found in 1634 the analogous Académie Française with the task of acting as an official authority on the French language, charged with publishing the official dictionary of that language. The following year the Academy received letters patent from the King Louis XIII as the only recognized academy for French language. In its turn the state-established academy was the model for the real Accademia Española and the Swedish Academy, which are the ruling bodies of their respective languages and editors of major dictionaries. It also was the model for the Russian Academy, founded in 1783, which afterwards merged into the Russian Academy of Sciences. After the short-lived Accademia Secretorum Naturae of Naples, the first academy exclusively devoted to sciences was the Accademia dei Lincei, founded in 1603 in Rome, particularly focused on natural sciences. In 1657 some students of Galileo founded the Accademia del Cimento in Florence, focused on physics and astronomy. The foundation of Academy was funded by Prince Leopoldo and Grand Duke Ferdinando II de' Medici. This academy lasted after few decades. In 1652 was founded the Academia Naturae Curiosorum by 4 physicians. In 1677, Leopold I, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, recognized the society, and in 1687 he gave it the epithet Leopoldina, with which is internationally famous, p78, so it became the Academy of Sciences for the whole Holy Roman Empire. Academies of Sciences. Military academies. Modern use of the term academy. French regional academies overseeing education. On November 28, 1660, a group of scientists from and influenced by the Invisible College met at Gresham College and announced the formation of a college for the promoting of physico-mathematical experimental learning, which would meet weekly to discuss science and run experiments. In 1662 Charles II of England signed a royal charter which created the Royal Society of London, then Royal Society of London for the Improvement of Natural Knowledge. In 1666 Colbert gathered a small group of scholars to found a scientific society in Paris. The first 30 years of the Academy's existence were relatively informal, since no statutes had as yet been laid down for the institution. In contrast to Royal Society, the Academy was founded as an organ of government. In 1699, Louis XIV gave the Academy its first rules and named it Académie Royale des Sciences. Although Prussia was a member of Holy Roman Empire, in 1700 Prince-Elector Frederick III of Brandenburg founded its own Prussian Academy of Sciences upon the advice of Gottfried Leibniz, who was appointed president. During the 18th century many European kings followed and founded their own Academy of Sciences. In 1714 the Academy of Sciences of the Institute of Bologna, in 1724 the Russian Academy of Sciences, in 1731 the Royal Dublin Society, in 1735 in Tuscany, in 1739 the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, in 1742 the Royal Danish Academy of Sciences and Letters, in 1751 the Göttingen Academy of Sciences, in 1754 in Erfurt, in 1759 the Bavarian Academy of Sciences and Humanities, in 1763 the Accademia Theodoro Palatina in Heidelberg, in 1779 the Sciences Academy of Lisbon, in 1783 the Royal Society of Edinburgh, in 1782 the Accademia dei Quaranta in Rome, in 1784 in Turin. This kind of academy lost importance after the university reform begun with the foundation of the University of Berlin, when universities were provided with laboratories and clinics, and were charged with doing experimental research. At first such institutions only trained the artillery and military engineering officiers, like the Aula de Artilleria and the Aula de Fortificação in Lisbon, the Real Academia de Savoia in Turin, the Imperial Artillery Military Academy of St. Petersburg, the Royal Military Academy Woolwich, the Real Collegio de Artilleria in Segovia. Starting at the end of the 16th century in the Holy Roman Empire, France, Poland, and Denmark, many knight academies were established to prepare the aristocratic youth for state and military service. Many of them lately turned into gymnasiums, but some of them were transformed into true military academies. Russian Research Academies. The Royal Danish Military Academy began to educate all officers for the Royal Danish Army by request of King Frederick IV in 1713. The École Militaire was founded by Louis XV of France in 1750 with the aim of creating an academic college for cadet officers from poor families. The construction began in 1752, but the school did not open until 1760. The Therschion Military Academy was founded on December 14, 1751 by Maria Theresa of Austria. Per year the Academy accepted 100 noblemen and 100 commoners to start their education there. These were the model for the subsequent military academies throughout Europe, like the Reale Accademia Militare of Naples in 1787 and the Military Academy Karlberg in 1792. English school types. Tertiary education. Primary and secondary education. National academies are bodies for scientists, artists, or writers that are usually state-funded and often are given the role of controlling much of the state funding for research into their areas, or other forms of funding. Some use different terms in their name, the British Royal Society for example. The membership typically comprises distinguished individuals in the relevant field, who may be elected by the other members, or appointed by the government. They are essentially not schools or colleges, though some may operate teaching arms. The Académie Française was the most influential pattern for these. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which presents the annual Academy Awards, is an example of a purely industry body using the name. College-type specialized academies include the Royal Academy of Music of the United Kingdom, the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, the United States Naval Academy, United States Air Force Academy, and the Australian Defence Force Academy. In emulation of the military academies, police in the United States are trained in police academies. Because of the tradition of intellectual brilliance associated with this institution, many groups have chosen to use the word academy in their name, especially specialized tertiary educational institutions. In the early 19th century, academy took the connotations that gymnasium was acquiring in German-speaking lands, of school that was less advanced than a college but considerably more than elementary. Early American examples are the prestigious preparatory schools of Phillips Andover Academy, Phillips Exeter Academy and Deerfield Academy. In England, academy had a specialized meaning for schools, but the Edinburgh Academy was more like the American examples. Academy was also used very loosely for various commercial training schools for dancing and the like. Mozart organized public subscription performances of his music in Vienna in the 1780s and 1790s, he called the concerts academies. This usage in musical terms survives in the Concert Orchestra Academy of St. Martin in the Fields and in the Brixton Academy, a concert hall in Brixton, South London. Academies proliferated in the 20th century until even a 3-week series of lectures and discussions would be termed an academy. In addition, the generic term the academy is sometimes used to refer to all of academia, which is sometimes considered a global successor to the Academy of Athens. In France, regional academic councils called academies are responsible for supervising all aspects of education in their region. The academy regions are similar to, but not identical to, the standard French administrative regions. The rector of each academy is a revocable nominee of the Ministry of Education. These academies' main responsibility is overseeing primary and secondary education, but public universities are in some respects also answerable to the academy for their region. However, French private universities are independent of the state and therefore independent of the regional academies. In Imperial Russia and Soviet Union, the term academy, or Academy of Sciences, was reserved to denote a state research establishment. See Russian Academy of Sciences. The latter one still exists in Russia, although other types of academies appeared as well. From the mid-17th to the 19th centuries, educational institutions in England run by nonconformist groups that did not agree with the Church of England teachings were collectively known as the dissenting academies. As a place at an English public school or university generally required conformity to the Church of England, these institutions provided an alternative for those with different religious views and formed a significant part of England's educational system. University College London was founded in 1826 as the first publicly funded English university to admit anyone regardless of religious adherence, and the Test and Corporation Acts, which had imposed a wide range of restrictions on citizens who were not in conformity to the Church of England, were abolished shortly afterwards, by the Catholic Relief Act of 1829. In 2000, a form of independent state schools, called academies, were introduced in England. They have been compared to U.S. charter schools. They are directly funded from central government rather than through local councils, and are partly privately sponsored. Often the sponsors are from business, but some are sponsored by universities and charities. These schools have greater autonomy than schools run by the local councils. They are usually a type of secondary school, but some are all-through schools with an integral primary school. Some of the early ones were briefly known as city academies, the first such school opening on September 10, 2002 at the Business Academy Bexley. The Queen's Speech, which followed the 2010 general election, included proposals for a bill to allow the Secretary of State for Education to approve schools, both primary and secondary, that have been graded outstanding by Ofsted, to become academies. This will be through a simplified, streamlined process which will not require the sponsors to provide capital funding. In 2012, the UK government began forcing some schools which had been graded satisfactory or lower into becoming academies, unilaterally removing existing governing bodies and head teachers in some cases. An example was Downhill's primary school in Haringey, where the head teacher refused to turn the school into an academy. Ofsted were called in to assess the school, failed it, and both the head and the governing body were removed and replaced with a government-appointed board despite opposition from the school and parents.